Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be breaking down the newest release or teased character, Elvira, and with it, I do think her kit looks pretty interesting, though admittedly, it is one that I wasn't super sure of or I wasn't super familiar with, honestly, until I saw her in play and in combat. But without further ado, let's get straight into it. So to start things off, yes, Elvira does have pretty good stats here. She's got 120 speed. She has honestly really nothing else that's pretty notable, but as you'll see in a moment, there's a reason for that. She does have an open imprint of effectiveness, which is pretty decent, but honestly, even in terms of stats, despite giving self-inflicted, or rather having self-imprint of effectiveness, giving it to the team, and also having 120 base speed, this doesn't necessarily feel like a character that will rely entirely on speed, and again, we'll see why in a moment. So to start things off, we have skill 2, which is Craving Affection. Now, Elvira herself, like I guess other characters in the game, including the RNL, now has a free buff, and this is lots of free stats. And again, this is something that you're granted at the start of battle. As far as I understand, again, this doesn't last, or rather, this isn't dispellable, or it doesn't have a turn duration, unless if you, of course, die here, which is fine. It is what it is. But when you have Engulf, yes, you have 100% increased effectiveness and critical hit resistance, which again, these are both pretty good stats, which we'll see, and this will make I guess a little bit more sense once we see how she's supposed to be played. But effectively, this skill 2 is a pretty big nuke, or rather, I should say, this is a pretty big buff to her damage, as again, when she attacks, she penetrates defense, though, like the original Elvira 2, you really aren't going to be using this to crit. That said, after an ally uses a skill, for each debuff that they inflict, she has a 25% chance to increase her CR, and yes, this is probably the first of many percentages in this kit that feel a little bit weird, especially with the state of epicseven, where it feels like otherwise they've done away with, or they've made everything close to, or actually just 100%, which is where some of my confusion is, as this isn't like 25% and the skill enhance will take it to 50 or 100. This is just 25, and again, obviously the combat readiness is, well, as far as I know, this should be 15%. If not, it's 10, and it is what it is. Now, as we move to her skill 3, this is another sort of a little bit confusing effectiveness, sort of skill in general. Now, at base, yes, you do have a 35% chance to inflict curse on all enemies except for the target for 2 turns before attacking the enemy, which is okay, and you'll understand again in a moment why this makes sense. But this not only inflicts curse on all enemies, this also increases the combat readiness of the target by 50%, or rather, of the caster by 50%. And if you have Engulf, the effect chances here are doubled. So this means that you have a 70% chance to inflict curse on all enemies except for the target before basically nuking one character. Now, this is supposed to basically be like the bread and butter ability here, and though it doesn't necessarily sound like a 70% chance to inflict curse on all allies is super insane, when you take a look at how they use it in basically in combat, this makes a bit more sense. Effectively, this is similar to what I'm sure Melissa was intended to be after her 11 buffs, but effectively what happens is you are cursing all targets on field, and you're dealing a pretty big nuke here with said ability, and as you can see, this does end up popping or doing a bit of damage to the entire team, though again, this I don't think is necessarily as insane as it could be, especially because, of course, in order to even do that, you do need the 70%, or you have to land the 70% chance to curse all enemies on the field. Now, even with the new 85% chance, or rather with the new set that allows you to increase your chance to land, that's only an 85% chance after the effect increase. But of course, again, you may be curious as to how this character is supposed to be played, and through what they've shown in combat, it's honestly not super crazy, though we should get to the skill 1 before we do. Now, again, from the skill 1, this is a 75% chance to inflict seal before attacking. As far as I understand, this should make it 85%, which further to me insinuates that you're supposed to take the increased debuff chance set, or the weakening set, I believe, with her. However, again, it feels a little bit weird, mostly because this feels like a bit of a solo character, or a character who, just like Elvira in the past, you don't want her to kind of solo over and over. But first and foremost, again, this is a chance to seal for S1, or from her S1 before attacking, which is nice. But when it's used on the caster's turn, there's also a 40% chance to activate Twisted Strike as an extra attack. Now, Twisted Strike is honestly pretty good. This is, again, a pretty decent way to heal. It also has a chance to inflict fear. And again, with Engulf, this is a double chance. So this is a 70% chance to fear. But it's a little weird feeling, at least to me, mostly because the effect chance here, as far as I understand, will still only put you at 85. If, as far as I understand, or I apologize, I'm really trying to absorb what's going on in this kit. If this effect chance is doubled, applies to weakening, and this makes it 100 if you have the weakening set. And again, alongside the other things here, like the curse, if all of this is doubled to 100% with weakening, and I'm mistaken on the understanding of this, then I apologize. However, still, again, an 85% chance to apply these things feels a little bit underwhelming. Though, again, if it is a 100% chance to apply, fine. And of course, it is still pretty relevant for how we actually break down this character's kit. Now, let's take a moment to assume that this is a 100% chance to guarantee or apply the fears and all the different debuffs that we have here. If you take a look at how they basically sell this character, effectively you're using this, at least from how they've shown her, as an anchor, or kind of a general, not necessarily needing to be used with fast or slow characters sort of team. And from what you'll see here, the fight is pretty straightforward. Everyone basically ends up dying. These are a bunch of characters who do have semi-relevant passives, so that her S1 is kind of relevant. But yes, basically she takes a turn. She has ER, obviously, and she also has a bit of critical hit resistance, so she can't die as easily. She applies her S3 onto everyone. She hits the light Senya. I don't know why I was blanking so hard. Sorry. So basically, the Senya ends up getting hit. It one-shots the RB, which again, I do think is pretty relevant. And though the damage isn't necessarily amazing, obviously that is an RB that has, he has his attack buff, he has full stacks, and this only does 2.7k damage, which, of course, this is a character who's going to be quite tanky. They have the critical hit resistance, and that's fine. Of course, from here as well, you could see that this really does end up being a 1v4, and they're trying to sell this. They're also trying to sell her basically not taking or not being debuffed nearly as easily. This feels a bit weird, or a little bit unrealistic, as again, this is a light Tenebria and an Arnel who isn't tagging her through some means, which feels a little bit dishonest in terms of how most of these characters are built. If you play any of these characters, you'd probably expect there to be pretty high effect resistance in general from these characters, but even in terms of the damage here, she doesn't feel impossible to kill. Again, 3.7k damage taken here. This feels more like a symptom, honestly, of her just so happening to fight against characters that can all be one-shot, especially if you have things like Seal available in your kit. And yes, this does mean that while she is a bit niche, she does perform quite well, especially if you're taking her into characters like the Arbiter Vildred, and she does sustain a little bit, though again, this is not nearly as crazy as I think of a kit as I first initially expected. As you can see here as well, she's also trying to take her in, or take this team into a very faster team. This has got the Wanderer Silk and such, the Vildred. Now, again, in terms of applying Curse, yes, I do think her ability to cut ahead is quite nice. But the way that they initially sold her as this sort of like tank character, I don't know for sure. Now, if you want to apply Curse, I think that's kind of interesting, I guess. And as a bridge for this very exact lineup, if you are trying to activate Vildred, that does seem pretty okay. And again, being able to I guess 2 damage and apply curse looks fine damage number wise, but like, let's be honest, guys. This is a team that has literally no answer to a New Moon Luna, and then Elvira cuts ahead and does damage. Well, basically, you probably could have put any character here. I mean, you could have put Ludwig here. You could have put, I mean, literally any defense breaker. You could have put Briarwitch Iseria, and there's probably a good chance that the villager is going to do damage here. Now, of course, it is relevant that she's able to activate him, but between the two kind of showcases that we've seen here, I think it's relevant that she, of course, has all this free stat. Yes, I do think it's nice that she is a bit tankier through the critical hit resistance. And yes, I do think it's nice that you can, of course, apply the effectiveness here. But part of the value that I feel like maybe comes from this is her ability to apply Cascade, or maybe her ability to deal a little bit of damage on S3. But even when she was quote unquote built without, a super high amount of HP in this like 11,000 HP showcase, this was not the most insane amount of damage that I've ever seen. And I'm assuming that there's not an incredible way for her to like scale this damage. By itself, this was already a pretty good amount of damage to the boss Arunca. And don't get me wrong, that's amazing. That's fine. I just don't necessarily know if doing that much damage, basically putting yourself or scaling yourself to be like 10,000 HP, and then only applying curse is necessarily going to feel the best. Though again, I do think this character definitely has potential as a cleave sort of option, and who knows, maybe there's a lot of ways to kind of I guess pair this character with the RNLs or the debuffers of the world, and she'll be able to cut, deal a bit more damage, and then survive. It's just, for me, this feels a little bit odd, as again, there are some real sick like characters in this game, and when I say sick, I mean sick and twisted, where it feels like you have a lot that you have to like to deal with. And again, this isn't a character who strips. Yes, she gets some CR, which is nice, and yes, she has F, but the reality is that, you know, as a solo carry, that wasn't necessarily like the cleanest or the safest game. She had pretty much everything in her favor. And then, of course, she also has to deal with basically the stats, or the, if you do have her, regardless if she survives or not, like what is she exactly going to do to the team? If this damage ends up being much higher and something that we can scale better, great. However, as far as I understand, this is just a damage dealing ability that I would assume it scales with attack. So I guess if she's double attack, that makes sense, and she could rely off of the 100 attack. But either way, as far as we've seen right now, guys, I think Elvira looks cool. Just like her old kind of, I guess her old kit, though, it feels like we have to wait and see either for her multipliers or some specific niche where she really shines. As a solo character, I feel that there are probably other characters that do it a little bit better. This is definitely not a Setsuka or a just off the rip going to immediately make your life hell type character, at least from what we've seen. Yes, she survives a bit, which is amazing, but this is also a character, even in the turn 2 showcase, that has 18,000 HP, and as far as I know, if she had basically been debuffed, would have just gotten one shot anyways. That's it for today's video though, guys. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you all next time. Take care, stay safe, good night.